All right, folks, Doug from Vanster Performance here. I just took a bunch of videos out in the shop, a little compilation of unboxing some parts that we just got in for GoldZilla, and I thought I'd just show you what we have going on, some of the new parts we got, and why we got them. Take a look. Beautiful ultimate headers.
Man, those are nice.
GoldZilla swap headers. Them are nice. Them are real nice. These investment cast flanges, super strong. Beautiful welding. This is not the first set I've seen. As a matter of fact, we had the very first set that are on Rob Braun's car. Make sure everything looks good and shipping arrived, no dings, damage, beat up, parts. Yeah. I'm gonna make some rumbly noises. We got bolts, which is handy. Yeah, and they even sent a set of Cometic gaskets with it. Not the factory ones that have that big metal shield on there you cut yourself trying to change the spark plugs. Remember those, Cal?
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Sweet.
Thank you to Ultimate Headers. We appreciate it. All right, so Summit, I was looking for a surge tank, and normally I would run like a brand name surge tank like a Deechworks or something in the sort of radium, right? I noticed that Summit has their own surge tanks now. To be honest, they don't make anything, but so I reached out to a friend of mine that works at Summit. I asked him if he knew anything about it. They really didn't yet, so I figured, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. Summit's always been good. They've always had decent parts. We use a lot of their fittings. I don't use as much hose ends, but I do use a lot of their fittings and a lot of knickknacks and pieces. These are the fittings that go with it. So this thing it's pretty wild. This is a dual pump surge tank. It's 3 liter. It's twice the size of a radium tank, which was one of the big selling points for it. This thing's much bigger capacity. And what this does is you feed, you don't even need a high pressure pump in your main tank. So the factory fuel tank pump will probably suffice. I might put a 255 in there just to be safe, but that's just low pressure. All you need is flow to fill this surge tank. And then there's going to be 2 pumps in there. Look at that. That's freaking nice. This top comes apart, pop it out, and then the fuel pumps go in it. So you're going to have a supply right here, which comes from your main fuel tank. You have an outlet 1 that comes from the first pump, an outlet 2 that comes from the second pump if you want to use it. Those feed the fuel rails. The regulator returns back to this. So this is a priority fill from the return. Anything that overflows in that, while it's running or idling or what have you, comes out of this overflow back into the main tank, right? So with this, you don't have to worry about any slosh in your fuel, you know, going around corners, drifting sideways at 60 miles an hour or whatever. This thing is constantly going to be full of fuel because it's being fed from the main tank, and you don't have to worry about the fuel going all over the place. And also, I got the kit that came with 2 pumps. Now, I wasn't going to use these, but I figured, what the hell, I'll give them a shot, right? After looking at them, they're pretty much AEM pumps. So they say Summit on them, but they're pretty much an AEM pump. Now, they say they're only rated to 320 pounds per hour. But that's at 90 PSI. So at 45 PSI or 60 PSI, these will support more. The AEMs rate them at 340 at 80 PSI. So we're not going to be running that much. So these are really nice pieces. like I said, someone doesn't make their own. Yeah, look at that. It is an AEM. It's AEM stamped right on the top of it. So it may be a Summit branded, but this is an AEM pump. They're only like 90 bucks or 95 bucks, right? I got 2 of them. They come with the whole kit that you need to install into here. It's sock, lines, connector, clamps, everything else. I'm only going to run 1 pump, but I'm going to have both of them in here, and I'm going to have one capped off. That way, if I do have a problem, it's just as easy as taking this off. I'll put Deutsch connectors on here, unplug it here, plug it into here, and I've got a backup pump, right? This are also E85 capable, this set that I bought. If I ever down the road decide to go to E85, I've already got enough fuel system in the car to do it. This whole thing was not that bad. I can't remember the exact price. I did buy it through my pro account, but it was under $400. It was like 380 or 360 bucks, $366 or something like that, right? They did come with these connectors, which I probably won't use. These are crimp and heat shrink. We'll see how, we'll test one out first. If they're not any good, we'll put our own connectors with some DR25 or some type of good connector and heat shrink. But yeah, look, all the fittings and everything came with it. How do you beat it? All right, so here's a few extra things I wanted to go over, some pieces that we got for the car and a couple of reasons why we got them. These little things right here, these are a binion, they're a binion. They're a pinion bearing spacer. So essentially they replace the crush sleeve that's in there and make it solid. You have to set it up with a bunch of different shims, find out where your preload is happy. Just get rid of the crush sleeve, so whenever you're clutch kicking it or drag racing or doing whatever, that it's not trying to compress the sleeve and loosen up and everything else. So these are great to have in any rear end. So I got 2 of them just in case. I got one for this car, one for the beater Stang, or if Cal needs one, we got one for him. Got rear diff cover, girdle. It's not a super high dollar one. You don't need a super high dollar one. This is a trick flow girdle. If I decide I don't like it, I'll put it on another car. We got enough of them. But normally I use the Ford Motorsport ones, but they were on back order. And either way, it's a trick flow. It's got the load bolts here for to go up against the bearing caps to help preload bearing caps. Saves a little bit of walk on the gears. Neat little unit. Comes with all the bolts, hardware. Lube locker. Now I don't know if a lot of you guys know what these are. These are a embossed cover gasket for a differential. We use them a lot on 9 inches. Right? So that way you don't goop them up with silicone and then you got to pound the hell out of them, clean them up. It saves a ton of time. And they're reusable. Doesn't look like much, but these things are awesome. They're steel inside, and they have these sealing, I don't know what they call it. It's like a permaseal or whatever, all the way around the outside. These really seal up nice. You can take the rear cover off without having to pound it off with a hammer and then scrape a bunch of glue off and then re-glue it. So for the 20 bucks these things are, you're going to save that in messing around. Since we are going and building the diff, this is again 35 spline axles, 9-inch bearing ends, but I'm keeping the same 8.8 bolt pattern. I got the housing ends for Mosier because those will allow a factory style brake caliper bracket will retain the bearing. The Strange ones don't work that way. They need an extra retainer and I just don't trust them. I love Strange. I use everything Strange, but the housing ends, I use Mosier. And another thing is they're longer, thicker. So when you weld to them, welding them to the housing, that heat transfer doesn't warp them. Where a Strange, if you get them too hot, yeah, well, sometimes you can get tricky with the bearing sliding in and out of them. So since we're going that big, we went with a 1350 Strange chromoly pinion yoke. Nice little piece. We got the straps to go with it. I'll throw them right in the box. That way when I order a drive shaft, I can get 13550 style U-joints and I don't have to worry about the flange anymore. Drifting. Tell you what, anytime you go and you have a tech, you have a battery anywhere, if you don't have it in a box or whatever, you have to have battery covers on them. So many places you go, you got to have battery covers on. We found that out the hard way. We've had a lot of them had to electrical tape them and do everything we can to cover them up. That's in case of a wreck or whatever. If the battery gets dislodged and slides and it's not in a box, these can't short out on the car, cause a fire, or whatever. I got a couple little ones. My battery is dual post. It's got top post and side. And so I've got covers for the side post too, so I can utilize both. Stupid stuff that you try to think about ahead of time. We got battery pass-throughs, some battery junction studs. I like the marine battery terminals for the top post, because then you can just, when you tighten everything down, if you need a quick disconnect, you can loosen up this wing nut and pull everything off. And we have a special crimper to crimp our battery cable ends on with. So you get a battery cable in with an eyelet, slides right down, tighten it up nice and tight. Sometimes they'll even put a real thin bolt. If we're worried about it coming loose, you can get rid of the wing nut and put a bolt on there. Or I'm sorry, a nut that holds it down. You don't have to worry about it coming loose. Side post terminals. Didn't really need them. You can use a bolt, but they were cheap. Two of the trick things that we got here. You'll see in a lot of drifting or burnout comps or whatever, you'll see a lot of people have a valve where they can turn off the rear brakes. So it might be under the hood, it might be down by their feet, it might be in weird areas. But if a lot of times you have to have a crew member come over and turn your brakes off or whatever. You want to go sliding, you're left foot braking and the rear brakes are grabbing too much and you can't get the bias out of them, you can just shut them off. Or if you're just doing burnouts, you're doing a burnout competition, you don't want to be riding the brakes, right? At least not on the back. So they shut them off. The problem with a lot of those that we've noticed is they will eventually let a little bit of fluid past. And if you don't turn them off, they lock up. You cannot, you have to turn that valve back up open to let the fluid come back, because it creeps past the valve and it won't come back. So this is used a lot in roundy round racing. This is a brake shutoff valve. It's got a pressure relief on it, but it's a brake shutoff valve, and this is electronic. This is going right in line with my rear brakes. And through my Haltech ECU on my CAN dash, or not CAN dash, but the CAN keypad, I can just hit a button. The PDM in the ECU will engage this and it'll completely shut my rear brakes off. Okay, so no worrying about a crew member, no worrying about bleed by, no worry about any of that other stuff. This is all electronic. When I'm done, if I'm mid drift or whatever, I can actually comprehend it easy enough. I can reach over and hit it, or turn it on, turn it off, whatever, or have it come on and off automatically depending on certain situations. But that's a cool little unit to have. And then we have obviously your standard brake bias adjuster, because we will be running disc brakes. The factory proportioning valve is out of the car. We're not using that anymore. I will have pressure sensors, not only on the front brake, 1600 psi on the front brake, 1600 psi on the rear brakes, and I'll have a 1600 psi on the hydro. So that way, when I'm data logging, I can see where my brake pressures are. I can adjust my bias here. We can adjust pedal ratio if we have to, master cylinder size, whatever, in order to get the effect that we need. If we're yanking the handbrake and we're like, this thing isn't working, and we've got enough pressure back there, well, then we know it's something in the calipers or the pads or something is just not happy. Right? So too much data is never a bad thing. These, I'll tell you, I've never used these. I've probably set up 100 to 150 ring and pinions in my life. Most of them have been 8/8s. I've done a ton of 9-inch stuff. We've done stuff for blown alcohol dragsters and everything else. And I've always used Ford, Motive, Richmond gears. And I saw these and I'm like, you know what? For a car like this, why not give them a shot? These are Summit Motorsport ring and pinion. Never used them. What a better time than now to see how I like them. If they suck, I'll just sell them cheap. I'll put them in a beater stang, right? We got another car we can throw it in. That car nobody cares about. That car is just a party car. If it gets crashed, if it gets wrecked, if we break it, if we blow it up, nobody's gonna cry. So if it don't work out in this car, put it in another one. I'm curious who makes these gears. I should have expected this thing to be taped up like Fort Knox. You can use an Allen wrench to cut tape if you're brave enough. All right, I'm curious. You usually tell hey, wow, it looks like a nice piece. 8730. Man, I don't know. I don't know who makes these. Ooh, there you go. I'll have to look these part numbers up on here and get back to you. I'm curious who makes the ring. Summit Racing is not a ring and pinion manufacturer. Right? They have other manufacturers like Richmond or US Gear or Yukon or somebody makes it for them. They put their name on it and then they sell it. These been sitting around the shelf for, must be, a lot of people must not trust these things. These are January 2023, so these things are 2 years old, still in the box. But I'll tell you, these markings on the front with the pinion depth marking, I don't know, these almost look like a Richmond or a US Gear. But we'll find out. Give it a whirl. How bad can it be? It's just a ring and pinion. Worst case, we have to change them again. And these things are a dime a dozen, and they came in every freaking Ford Explorer ever made, I think. But give them a shot. I think they're cheaper because they don't come with any bolts. And they don't come with a nut, and they don't come with a crush sleeve. And that is probably the reason why they're cheaper. They're probably good quality, but they leave out all that little stuff that you got to go back and buy now. Luckily, I have probably half a dozen pinion nuts and a couple sets of bolts and everything else here, so I'm not worried about that. Let's move on. Cal's getting tired of holding the camera, and the phone battery's probably going to die. You all right there, Cal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. These are important. This is going to have an electric power steering pump on it out of a Volvo. I found this little baby on Marketplace. This is like a $300 freaking cooler. Picked it up for $100. I don't know if it's ever been used. Might have. Yeah, it's been used. But this is a Durali dual stock plate cooler. Well, not stock plate on this one, but it's got 8 feed lines, 8A in and out, 8A in out. With a nice Durali fan. This is for power steering. This is going to try to keep my power steering cool through this whole process. This one is really important, and they're a lot of money, but they're absolutely worth it. This is an engine oil cooler, accessory one. This is a big fatty -12 monster core stack plate unit with a gnarly fan on it. You can run -12 or -10 fittings in this thing. All of my oil that's going through my motor is going to go through my filter, into this, out of this, and into the engine. And we will have pressure sensor on the front side of this and the back side to see if we're losing any. I'll have one engine and we'll have one at the filter housing just to make sure that we're not losing any pressure across this. I can't imagine how we possibly could. We don't run super heavyweight oil in these. But this, I had to save up a little bit for this one, but it's gonna be well worth it. Got to keep these things cool in these cars. I got a big, huge AFCO radiator that came out of a Fox body that I'm going to work into this car with another big set of Durali fans. the Durali fans ain't good enough, then we'll put some brushless spowl fans on it. This actually has a spowl fan on it here. Not a brushless, but a spowl nonetheless. Heat management is the biggest thing in a drift car. And if we end up having to put them on the rear end or put them on the transmission, I'll put coolers anywhere that we have to in order to keep the fluids cool and pieces alive. That's it for now. We got more stuff coming over the next couple days, and we'll go over that. Right now, this is GoldZilla with our Team Z Motorsports tubular front end. So this is the unwelded kit that we welded on ourselves. We got the K-member, this awesome FDF Race Shop Mega Mantis angle kit, and some Feel 441 coilovers, and the FDF caster plates. This thing should handle absolutely awesome. And there's a special thing going to happen with this car. It's not only going to be a drift car, it's going to be a street car, but it's going to be something else, and we'll discuss that later down the road.